Of what I always considered the original Big Three hard-use cold steel G10 handled folding knives, the American Lawman was always my personal favorite. I've always loved the way this thing looked and was felt in the hand and was designed over the AK-47 and the Recon 1. It's just such a simple, straightforward, and functional design. It's not trying to wow anybody, it's not trying to win any beauty contests. You get this thing in hand and it just freaking works. And I have to say that if you don't have time to watch this whole video, my recommendation is you run out and buy an American Lawman. Any generation of American Lawman, because quite frankly, they are all absolutely fan-freaking-tastic knives. And if any of you watched my AK-47 review, you probably know I'm not just going to show you this current generation, which is a Generation 4. I wish I had a Generation 3 to show you, which is an XHP steel, but I don't. I do, however, have a Generation 2 in AUS 8, as well as the Generation 1 in AUS 8, that full steel line version, and a Generation 1 mini American Lawman. I don't have the Generation 2 mini American Lawman, which was also in XHP steel. So I'm missing the Generation 3 of the standard Lawman and the Generation 2 of the mini Lawman. That being said, I think I have enough here to really demonstrate what makes this knife so freaking awesome, as well as the small changes made to the design over the years. And it's not as radical as with the AK-47 or the Recon 1 for that matter. And when you compare each generation next to its closest relative, you don't see too many differences. You see small ones. But when we compare the first generation here against the most recent generation, the differences become quite apparent. Let's go ahead and dive into this. We'll start and focus primarily on the current gen version because it's the one you can buy. Again, this is a Generation 4 post-GSM Outdoors era in S35 VN steel, which is a fan-freaking-tastic steel. At one point, this was considered like the super steel everyone wanted. It was basically meant to be a redesigned version of S30V, offering better toughness, but trading off just a little bit of edge retention, I believe was the common belief system. What really matters is that this steel is going to hold a damn good edge. It's not going to be very difficult to sharpen. It's going to be pretty rust resistant. And it takes a beautiful edge. I have dulled the edge on this particular American Lawman. This was my testing bed for Cold Steel's S35VN, and I found that it did really, really well. But, you know, I still had to put it through its paces, compare it against other steels, really get the data on their steel, and so I have dulled it. But it took very little effort to bring a beautiful edge back to it. Okay, we're 3.5 inches long. It's a classic drop point design, and on this current generation, it is a flat grind from very high up with a DLC coating, which is impervious to wear. I have cut so much cardboard with this thing, and it absolutely refuses to die. Let me get a drink. So yeah, I love the blade on the American Lawman. It clears through cardboard with very little effort. The tip is extremely penetrative, even though it's not a clipped point. It still has a very, very pointy tip, but a strong tip. It's not delicate. It's not likely to snap off on you. Like I said, it's a very simple, no frills, no holds barred, useful blade shape, which I'm a big, big fan of. You can see it is made in Taiwan, as Cold Steels have been for a very long time. The American Lawman has always been made in Taiwan, and Taiwan continues to produce some really high-quality knives. Now, I mentioned that this is a drop point with a flat grind. All these blades are drop points, but the Generation 1 and 2, I don't know about the 3 because I don't own it, but the Generations 1 and 2 were hollow ground blades, which is a difference between these knives. Let me compare the Generation 2 against the Generation 4, and you can see flat ground here, hollow ground here. This is also a Teflon coating on the Generations 1 and 2, as well as the Generation 1 Mini Lawman. So Teflon coated, it will wear off more. As you can see, it's definitely scratching up and banging up more as I use it. And I haven't used these that much. I've carried and used them, but like I put most of my use on this. This coating holds up better, but a difference in the grind. So hollow grind versus flat grind is really a personal preference. I find that I can get much sharper edges on hollow ground blades personally, but sometimes they can cause a little bit of drag when slicing as the material binds up as the blade begins to thicken out again. Versus a flat grind, I've noticed it seems to just go a little bit smoother. So yeah, very small differences there. The Generation 1 versus the Generation 2, there's a difference there as well, mainly because the grind starts a little bit lower on the Generation 1, as you can see. A little bit higher on this Generation 2 model. So very subtle differences. We can also see if we put these knives all side by side, the thicknesses of the blades, it's all pretty much the same, maybe slightly more robust on that Generation 1, but the Generation 2, 3, and 4 all lost the jimping that was topside of the Generation 1, which was very functional. I'm not sure why they got rid of that. Maybe they just didn't like the design. Maybe they felt that with this handle shape, it just wasn't necessary, which to be fair, it's not, because there's no way that you ever lose control of this knife. You have deep choils, whether you're down here or choking up, it's not likely that you ever lose control of this particular design, so the jimping admittedly was probably useless. AUS 8, as I mentioned, for the Generation 2 and the Generation 1. Cold Steel's AUS 8 has always been well loved by many people. It is amongst the better AUS 8 that's ever been produced. I'm not going to say it's a miracle. Now, if we look at the Mini Lawman, I'm not going to focus on this one all that much, but if we look at the Mini Lawman, again, this is a Generation 1 Mini Lawman, AUS 8, hollow ground, drop point blade, almost clipped, honestly. You could almost call that a clip point, but it's still a drop point in overall design. Also Teflon coated, AUS 8 steel, 2.5 inches in length. So very, very small blade, much more EDC-able. I'm sure a lot of people will prefer this for EDC. I personally like the standard size Lawman. It's on the larger end of an everyday carry blade for me, but I happen to enjoy it. Let's go ahead and talk about the deployment and lockup. Starting with the Generation 1, actually. Okay, Generation 1. I cannot quite get it all the way deployed. I guess I can sometimes, as you can see there. It's more work, though, to get it all the way deployed without wrist action, because that triad lock was so strong. I usually have to just pop my wrist a little bit to get it to come all the way out. The lockup, I can't flex that lock bar, and we're good side to side. Generation 2. Really can't get this one without wrist action. I need just a little wrist pop, and then I can get that one out. Locks up solid, no play up and down or side to side. Here's the Generation 4. Oh, messed it up that time. I can get this one without wrist action pretty consistently. It is a smoother deployment. The lockup, I can flex this triad lock a little bit. I can get a little up and down as I really rock on it. Side to side, we're good and tight. They are all triad lock designs. Here's the Mini Lawman. Comes out fast, locks up tight. No movement in that one whatsoever. So the triad lock, a very strong redesign of the traditional lock back, because a lot of our force is being transmitted to the stop pin rather than to the lock bar itself. The lock bars on triad locks are also often a little bit stouter and therefore a little harder to disengage. Not so much so that I can't do it with one thumb, flick the knife down and then close it one-handed. Be careful when doing that, but we have a choil here, so we're really not in any risk of cutting ourselves. But I love the deployment and lockup of the American Lawman knives. I think it's fantastic. The handles are all made of G10, but there are subtle differences between them. First of all, we're looking at, how big is the handle on the Mini? 3.8 inches for the Mini, 4 and 5/8 inches for the standard size Lawmans. All of them have G10, and you can see generations. For Generation 1 on the Mini will be this texture. The Generation 2 will have this texture. But Generations 1, 2, and 3 of the Lawman have this coarser, more signature Cold Steel aggressive G10. Okay, very, very grippy stuff, very high traction, with no to tear up your pockets. The Generation 4 abandoned that in favor of a more traditional G10, mild texture. It's okay, but it doesn't have near the grip that these do. Does it really matter? Honestly, no, not with this handle design, because, like I said, you just lock into it. It's extremely ergonomic. There's no way you move forward on that knife, so probably doesn't matter, but I feel like something was lost when we abandoned this wonderful, super aggressive G10. Now, the ergonomics on all of these knives are actually different. Starting with the Generation 1, we had full steel liners. Okay, so this is a heavier knife. We'll weigh them in a little bit. It was fully steel lined, though. Yeah, there's some skeletonizing, not a lot. But the handles were also a little bit squared, a little bit boxy. And as a result, while it is comfortable in the hand, it does feel a little bit blocky. If we look at the Generation 2 by comparison, it's pretty plain to see how they've rounded and radiused the edges of that G10, as well as abandoned those steel liners. So this knife is considerably lighter and considerably more comfortable in the hand, but it is also fairly thick. The Generation 4, again, I don't have the Gen 3, slimmed that handle quite substantially. And if we compare it with the Generation 1 in the picture, you can really see just how much slimmer the Generation 4 is than its predecessors. Again, here it is next to the Gen 2. And here it is next to the Generation 1. It is a much, much slimmer knife. So it carries better in the pocket. And while it's still ergonomic, I still find this comfortable. The lack of that width, that thickness from the Generation 2 design, I think does make it slightly less ergonomic in the hand. It's still very comfortable. It doesn't have any hot spots or anything, but that meatier handle on the Generation 2 is my favorite. It just feels so damn good in the hand. So it's interesting little differences like this that kind of set these knives apart a little bit. Talking on the mini Lawman, we have these finger grooves. So, it's not going to fit everyone's hands well. I wear medium-sized gloves, so I fit it just fine. I can get about a 3.5 finger grip. The lanyard I'll usually fold up and then kind of get me a full grip on this knife. I do like the handle. I don't like the pocket clip on the mini Lawman. So let's move the full size out of the way for a second, and I'll bring in the old cutlery lever pocket to show what I mean. So whenever we put this clip on the knife, and it's a very strong clip, we have a ton of knife exposed in the pocket. I like a little bit exposed, but this is egregious. This is just so much that even with that super tight clip and that hyper aggressive G10, I'd be worried that you would eventually lose this knife. It would pop out somewhere. Not a big fan of it. It is reversible to the other side. That is nice. It doesn't flare towards the tip. It actually angles downward, which I like, and it is good and stout. It just needed to be positioned higher up on that handle, or lower down, I guess I should say. The clips on the Generations 1, 2, and 4 full-size Lawman are all functionally the same, but there are small differences between them. The Generation 1 was ventilated here. It had this kind of slot cut into it. The Generation 2 did away with that and just put the Cold Steel logo on it. The Generation 4 just put the new logo on it. That said, they all carry identically in terms of depth in the pocket. So like the Generation 1 and the Generation 4 here, you can see they carry the same way. Exactly the same amount exposed, the same general overall design. And I'll show Generation 1 flares up a little bit, not too bad, wouldn't catch on anything. Generation 2, about the same. Generation 4, much better. They've angled it down so it's even less likely to snag on things. So the clip on the Gen 4 is the best version. They all carry roughly the same though. This is just a little bit less likely to get lost, kind of, because again, that smoother G10 means this won't grip the pocket as well as these will. So even with that flared up, you could argue that that extreme tension on the clip and that hyper aggressive pattern means these are not going to pop out anywhere as you're walking around. By the way, you can see they are all mounted or drilled for left-hand carry as well. You cannot use the exact same clip, but they include a left-handed clip in the box for putting on the left-hand side to make these fully ambidextrous, or ambidextrous. Someone got on my case for my pronunciation in an earlier video. And that thumb stud can also be unscrewed and reversed for true left-handed friendliness. So I love to see that. I always love to see lefty considerations. Let's get into weight. Okay, let's go ahead and weigh these suckers. Because boy, oh boy, is there a difference in the weight. And we're going to start with the Generation 1. Okay, so this is the fully steel-lined original American Lawman. 5.7 ounces. Not honestly terrible, but definitely heavier than most folks like. Here's the Generation 2. 4.5, not bad at all. Here's the Generation 4. 4.2. So pretty good. Again, Gen 2, 4.5, Gen 4, 4.2. And let's go ahead and throw the mini Lawman Generation 1 on there. 2.8. So I find the Generation 2 and 4 to be extremely carryable. The Generation 1 may be slightly heavy. The mini Lawman, obviously very carryable, minus that god-awful pocket clip placement. If you do love your mini Lawman, maybe reposition that clip or put a new one on entirely, just so it carries a little bit better. Overall, the price on these knives. Now, these older generations are going to vary a little bit. I never see this Generation 1 pop up for sale, so I have no frame of reference what it goes for these days. The Generation 2s I see sell for pretty close to $100 all day long. The Generation 4, the current design, you can find very often brand new for $120, and Amazon puts them on sale for like $85 all the time, which is a steal for how much we get out of this, how much knife this is. It is an incredibly well-built, very strong, great blade steel, hard use, everyday carry, and self-defense knife. Price on the mini Lawman, they don't come up that often. These honestly sell for way too much, typically around $100 for these Generation 1s. And I've never even seen a Generation 2, the CTS-XHP version, for sale. I've looked, I have never found one. So I couldn't tell you how much they go for. Kind of the same with the CTS-XHP versions of the full-size Lawman, the Gen 3s. I've looked and looked and looked. I was going to hold this video off till I found one. They just seem to be unobtainable. I can't locate one anywhere, but probably a couple $100 based on how hardcore cold steel collectors tend to be and how collectible cold steel knives tend to be as a whole. It's kind of funny because these were made to be super hard use, heavy duty beater knives, and they really do have their own cult following that adores them beyond pretty much the love that many other brands get. Maybe not more than Spyderco fans and Benchmade fans of those brands, but it's pretty damn close in my opinion, and they definitely use their knives a little bit more, which is always cool to see. So if you're questioning, should I buy an American Lawman, the answer is yes. On every generation, yes. They all have beautiful qualities to offer. They all have things that are unique and cool about them that the others don't. So I would highly recommend any version of the Lawman, even the Mini. I love the Mini. I just don't like the clip. Everything else about this thing, absolutely fantastic. So yeah, definitely go out and pick you up a Lawman. You won't regret it. I'll see you later.